and some people settled on the coast of the Northwest Pacific shores. Today we call these people the Native Americans of the Northwest. These people formed groups or nations with names like Tillamook, Haida, and the Coast Salish. These people settled in the Pacific Northwest region of North America. Villages were built near the Pacific Ocean, quiet bays and flowing rivers. Thick forests filled with redwood, fir, and cedar trees were close by. Snow-capped mountains rose into the sky. The weather was cool. It didn't get too hot in the summer, and winters were cold. Lots of rain fell from the clouds above. Nature provided plenty of everything the Northwest Native Americans needed: food, water, and wood for making houses, clothes, and tools. The land the Northwest people settled on provided plenty of food to eat. The oceans, bays, and rivers were filled with fish, seal, otters, shellfish, and crabs, so Northwest tribes mostly ate seafood. Salmon was a large part of their diet. Each spring, thousands of salmon would swim upstream in rivers. There were so many salmon that a man could catch enough to feed his entire family for 1 year. Men built long fences across the river made of tree saplings to catch the salmon. They also used nets and wooden traps. When the salmon were trapped, men would use spears to kill them. Fish eggs and fish oil were special treats. They were eaten at every meal. Women used them for cooking, seasoning, and medicine. Even though it was very dangerous, some natives hunted whales. A group of men would brave the ocean in a canoe. Once they found a whale, they used a harpoon to kill it. They used every part of every whale they hunted. The meat and skin were eaten. The blubber or fat was used for oil. The tendons were used to make rope. Northwest people also used the forests around them to hunt for food. Men used traps, clubs, and arrows to kill deer, elk, bears, and beavers. Their meat and fur were valuable to the nation. Women used the forest to gather wild berries, roots, and fruit. Northwest villages were built near oceans, bays, and rivers. A village always faced the water. Canoes were stored in front of the village across the sand. Behind the village houses were storage sheds for food, wooden sheds for smoking fish, and drying racks for drying fish. A village consisted of a series of plank houses built in a row. Plank houses were large, permanent homes built of wood from the surrounding forest. The frame of the house was constructed of large cedar trees. Logs and wood pegs were used as nails. Wooden planks were used for roofs. The planks overlapped to keep out the rain. Plank houses were 50 to 150 feet long and 20 to 60 feet wide. They were big enough for grandparents, parents, and grandchildren to live comfortably in. The leaders of the nation lived in the largest plank houses. The outside of a plank house was decorated with paintings and carvings. Inside, curtains made of woven mats hanging on rods separated the plank house into rooms. In the middle of the house was a sunken living room. In the center of the living room was a fire pit. Families used the pit to cook food and to gather around. There were no windows. but there was one hole in the ceiling for air. The ceiling was low, so the entire home would stay heated in the cool weather. The room in the very back of the plank house was usually reserved for the elders. This was the grandfather or grandmother. The grandfather was in charge of assigning each family member a space in the home. Woven mats were an important part of living in a plank house. They not only served as curtains, they were used as cushions to sit on, as towels, and they added color and decoration. Many of the houses of the Northwest people still stand today. Northwest people had a lot of leisure time because they didn't have to work very hard to search for food. With their extra time, they told stories, practiced weaving and carving wood, and held many social events. Northwest families loved to host celebrations called potlatches. They would spend months, sometimes years, preparing for one potlatch, and the entire village was invited. Potlatches were held to celebrate special occasions like a birth or marriage, and brought the family much respect. Guests would receive valuable gifts like fur or intricately weaved mats for coming. Sometimes the family would give away all of their possessions at one potlatch. The more they gave away, the wealthier they seemed, and the more respect they earned. Each member of the family played an important role. The grandfather was the head of the household. The men provided food by hunting and fishing. They also carved elaborate masks made of wood for ceremonies. Women were the homemakers. They kept the plank houses clean, washed clothes, and prepared all the food and meals. Women created a lot of the artwork. They wove baskets and mats and pounded cedar bark to make clothing or boxes and baskets. They gathered berries from the forest and dug for clams in the sand. Girls grew up helping their mothers cook, clean, and make clothing. Fathers taught their sons how to provide for a family. Boys learned how to hunt and fish for food and how to chop down giant cedar trees for wood to build houses and canoes. They also learned the art of mask carving. Children didn't attend school. Instead, their elders taught them everything they needed to know. Learning the family history was an important part of growing up. Parents and grandparents would teach the family history through storytelling. They told the children the story over and over until the child memorized it. One day, they would share the story with their own children. Northwest culture reflected their history and the land around them. Totem poles stood outside every home and were important to the families. The large wood poles were carved to show humans, animals, and other creatures. Red, black, and white paint decorated these figures. Some stood 80 feet tall. The carvings and paint told a story about the family living inside. The story could be about a family's history or an important